For wrestling diehards only, this is the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, our weekly podcast dedicated to the great sport of wrestling. Sorry we're a little tardy tonight. I was having computer troubles. My name is Brandon Bainey, and we're joined by a couple of great panelists tonight. First of all, I want to bring in my main man, Al Fontes. Al, what's going on? You got your camera working tonight.
Yeah, last week I accidentally hit the button that sort of took me off, and I didn't realize I hit that. And so, didn't happen this week. So how's it going?
Hey, going great. Good to see you. And
You
now
too.
let's bring in our third panelist tonight, Brian Zollinger. Brian, what's up?
Hey, gentlemen. Not a lot. Just excited to be here and lots to talk about for sure. It was a fun weekend, fun week.
Yeah, the first thing we got to talk about, Brian, though, is your attire for tonight's show. Go ahead and show everybody that sweatshirt you're rocking.
This is legit retro, 1994 Tiger-Grizz right here. My daughter wears it. And I'm like, hey, can I borrow your sweatshirt? I mean, it was mine back in the days, but it's hers now.
Yeah, isn't that funny how the females in our family kind of inherit and take over our sweatshirts and our hoodies and everything like that?
Yeah, that was a great year. We had three in the finals lineup. I had two Sanderson brothers on one side of me in the lineup, and Kale obviously down a little heavier. So that was a great year for Tiger-Grizz to have the three Sanderson brothers that year in the finals. Wasatch, they were great that year. I mean, they had 7 or 8 people in the finals at Tiger-Grizz. So it was a fun year for the Tiger-Grizz.
Yeah, and isn't this the 42nd annual? 42 years?
I think that's right.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yes.
A lot of tradition there.
Yeah, that's incredible for sure. Jacob Eck is usually on with us. He just had a newborn child though, so he is as he said in our group chat. He said, "Baby dude wins tonight." So Jacob, have fun with the young one, and we'll see you back here down the line. Friendly reminder: as you're hanging out watching this tonight on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account, go ahead and hit that like button while you're hanging out there. That'll help everybody that can't be here live tonight see it a little more easily tomorrow or down the line. If you're on Facebook, like it, share it. If you're on Twitter, like it, retweet it. If you're on YouTube, like it, and subscribe to the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel. That helps all of that social media algorithm stuff that is above my pay grade. And it helps everybody out that can't be here live tonight. And we want to hear from you, the fans. We want you in the chat. Last week's show was by far the busiest show we've had in terms of the chat, and I want to see it going again tonight. Matthew Hamilton already in here repping Post Falls. Let's go! Yeah, you know it. And congratulations, Jacob, as well. So, yes, congrats from everybody on your newborn child. That's really exciting. So, drop us a line in the comments. If there's a school, if there's an athlete you want to give a shout out to, a question you want to ask us, it is your show, Idaho wrestling fans. So you guys can kind of dictate the conversation and how it goes tonight. Another congrats for Jacob from Jacqueline. Thank you. And look at this. Yeah, look at this. All the congrats for Jacob coming up. We love it. All right. So before we get into taking everybody's questions and everything like that, we always start the show, of course, with the best thing that we saw from the last week. Al, I'll start with you. I have a feeling I know what it's going to be Tiger-Grizz heavy, I feel like. But Al, what was the best thing you saw from the past week?
Well, I wasn't there in person, but I did track it. I'd say the best thing was watching Minico, the 4A number 1 against South Fremont, the 3A number 1. The team score came down to the wire, where in the end, I think Minico won 253.5 to South Fremont's 252. They both had 3 champions, whereas Minico had 10 placers and South Fremont had 11. So, Brian, it must have came down to a bonus point or something in the thing. To have it that close was just great for the sport of wrestling.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was probably the number one, just watching how close that tournament was for team title.
Brian, what was the best thing you saw last week?
Al stole my thunder there because I was that was my favorite thing, and the way that went down, it was crazy. So in that gym, the lights are off. It's 2 spots lights on 2 mats now that they added the girls. And you had Hobbs finish at 182 in a pretty dominant finals match. He couldn't get the pin. It wasn't a tech. I believe he got the major over Henderson, who's just he's a hammer. And so, Hobbs had his handful, but handled the match. So he got points there. On the other mat, you had Kobe Clark at 195 starting his final match. And then Vale from Minico took the mat after Hobbs left, after the Clark match started. Vale gets a pin from Minico. And those watching the score know, Clark has got to get a pin in this 195 match. And what South Fremont's fans knew it. Everybody's screaming. Clark knew it in the mat. The coaches are telling him. There's a lot of blood timeouts. And it was so great because the crowd's going crazy. And you kind of felt for Clark because, he dominated the match. Just a great match. But he knew it. And at the end, he's upset. And the people that weren't following the score is like, why is Clark mad? He just won the Tiger-Grizz. So it was so cool to see because the South Fremont athletes wanted that to do it for their team so bad. It was just fun to see. So that was my favorite thing. It was also great. You had Hobbs win his 3rd Tiger-Grizz, which is pretty rare. And Riker Fulmer from Teton won his 3rd as a junior, setting up to be a 4-time Tiger-Grizz champion, which, I can't think of. There could be one in history, but I can't think of who's won it 4-time off the top of my head. So those were some pretty cool things this weekend.
So Brian, going back to the team score with Clark, what was his final score? Because if he would have got a pin, that would have been 2 additional points. Did he win by major or tech? I can't recall.
It was a major. He didn't get the tech either.
So they got an extra team point. So it would have been 1 more. So it would have been Minico probably would have won by a half a point. Unless who is it? Hunter Hobbs got a pin too.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think because we were figuring it that if he got the pin, they would have won by a half a point. So maybe he didn't get the major. It was 13-7, so he didn't.
Okay.
It was a 4-point win.
Yeah.
So maybe it would have been a tie. In the crowd at the moment, we were thinking if he gets the pin, they win by a half a point.
Yeah, because I thought Tech Fall was a 1.5, pin 2, then major 1. So that's close. Woo.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was electric.
Yeah,
and the reaction. Those around us that hadn't followed the score that close, they're looking at him like, why is he not happy? He just won. And you could just feel for the kid because, he put it on his shoulders. He wrestled an amazing tournament. But to me, that was just cool to see the South Fremont athletes want to win that team title so bad. And Minico pulled it off. They had a great tournament. The Vale kid getting the pin at 220 sealed the deal.
Yeah, Troy Hobbs said big shout out to Kayla Vale as well. So that's we talked last week about some of those duos. The best thing I saw from the weekend was also Tiger-Grizz related, but this was on the girls' side. 132 pounds, and basically for 5th and 6th place, Hallie Stone of Pocatello, Destiny Isaacson of Rigby. And I saw Hallie's family shared this on some social media that I follow. So the story is basically Hallie Stone of Pocatello gets the semifinals, and then she gets knocked out cold. And they're concerned, obviously. I'm going to read what they posted because I don't want to talk out of school here. Semifinal round, we knew would be a good match. Turns out we were wrong. During the match, she was knocked out, literally out cold by her opponent. So needless to say, she not only lost that match by injury, but had to default the rest of her matches. She is fine, but we wanted to not risk it, and her coach told the directors she was out for the rest of the tournament. Many tears were shed. As the day is winding down, the Rigby coach finds us and tells us his wrestler, Destiny Isaacson, would like to trade medals with Hallie. You see, because Hallie's injury defaulted, the best she could get is 6th based on her first 3 wins. Isaacson would have wrestled Hallie for 5th place, and Destiny told Hallie and her coach that she knew she wouldn't be able to beat Hallie, and so she thought Hallie Stone deserved the 5th place medal. Wow. Hallie's family says they cried. Then we told Hallie, and she cried. This young lady is what makes wrestling such an amazing sport. When they step on the podium, Hallie was struggling because she wanted more. She had higher expectations for herself. Destiny, however, put herself second and helped my daughter. This young lady will never understand the impact she had on us at Tiger-Grizz. So that's kind of a really cool story that if you're looking just at the scores, you're going to see 5th place, Destiny Isaacson Rigby, 6th place, Hallie Stone Pocatello. But there's the context behind the story, and I thought that was a really cool moment.
No, those stories we want to hear.
Yeah,
that's what cool. We really want to hear. That's awesome.
Yeah, so if you are an Idaho wrestling fan and there's a story like that out there somewhere, that's what we want to talk about. We want to shed the light on, because these are all great competitors, but they're great people too. And we talk about that every week, just how incredible these young men and women are outside of the arena as well. So yes, please share those stories with us, whether it's here in the chat. You can send an email to us as well, Brandon at IdahoSports.com, and I'll make sure we get it on the show for sure. Billy and Chelsea say, watch some good matches this weekend up at Tiger-Grizz. And Brig Blake says, how about the Packer-Mauger match? What do you think, Brian?
And that was one of the great matchups. Everybody was looking forward to that when it went down, and it didn't disappoint. So one of the great matches that we had there for sure.
Yeah, and they both wrestled at Fargo. So Packer, he placed at Fargo as well. Kids put in a lot of time, so that's great.
Yep. And it was almost too bad. I mean, the kid from Utah or Corner Canyon, I mean, in the finals with Mauger, that was a great match. But, the Packer-Mauger match in the semis was probably the best match of that weight class. I think it was a 2-point match, I believe, or 2 or 3 points. And so it was a great match.
Yeah, I think that kid from Utah was a state champion, 2-time finalist from Utah. You said Corner Canyon?
Yeah. The Vanco.
Yeah, Vivanco, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of the premier athletic programs in Utah, not just wrestling, but all sports. Their Corner Canyon, for sure. Their basketball team is legit. Troy says, he's a South Fremont rep. He says, I think if we would have brought our full lineup, we would have pulled it off. We only brought 12 to score, but hats off to Minico. They are awesome and great coaches. That's what makes wrestling fun, right, Al, is kind of the hypotheticals. But ultimately, for all the hypotheticals, ultimately the results are what they are. The data doesn't lie, right, Al?
Well, they're just giving us a snapshot what to come. But at the end of the day, put all the rankings aside, everything, when you get to state, that's really where you want to peak and be at your best performance. So I'm confident South Fremont, Minico, everyone's going to be at their peak at that time.
So, Al, you said you would crunch some of the numbers from Tiger-Grizz this year. You want to share?
Yeah. First of all, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong. I heard this on a news cycle or something. There was over 1,200 wrestlers at this tournament, boys and girls.
I think that is with the JV, because you had 700 JV.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the JV.
Over
so
12.
Based on the number crunching, of state champion, there was 10 returning state champions from, when I say this is from the 4 divisions. Of all the placers, there was 40 returning state placers. Out of state teams, 7 were placers, and then state qualifiers from last year's state place. Now, if we break it down to kids ranked in the rankings in all the divisions, there was 60 kids ranked in the state. And then if you break it down by placers by grade, it almost looks similar to Raleigh Lane, where 44% were seniors, 30 was juniors, 16% was the sophomores, and the freshmen were right around 9%. But as far as all Americans, we had 12 total. That includes one of the kids from Utah that placed at the Folk Style Nationals, with Mauger being a 4-time national champ, Aiden Attal being a triple crown winner. And, I think Bowden Banta placed out there. So you had some kids that had a lot of national level experience in this tournament. But overall, pretty good, solid stats.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And this is Brian. What was Tiger-Grizz like back in the '90s when you were competing? It was a big deal, right?
It was. I mean, it was the biggest. Everybody, from this side of the state, we didn't do as much traveling as they do now. Back and forth across the state. So this side of the state, and we had Boise, Utah school teams. Like I said, my senior year in the finals lineup, I literally had 2 Sandersons on one side of me, and then Cale Sanderson down the line. I mean, you had some of the all-time greats, obviously, with Cale Sanderson coming to Tiger-Grizz. Nobody knew what he would be then, but it was a tough tournament forever, and it was a bigger deal than state over here when I was in high school, just because you knew you were going to wrestle all divisions, and you'd have 3 or 4 state champions in your brackets. So, and it's still a big deal, and it's getting back to its glory. I think this was a good year. A lot of the schools came back from Utah. We didn't have Wasatch back, but we're hoping to get them back soon.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Like I said prior, for Wrestling USA, I think in the mid 90s, I used to write articles on the top tournaments in the country. So I'd break down the top 10 nationally, like the Ironmans, the Doc Bs, but I did regional. I remember Tiger-Grizz was one of the best in the Northwest region. I remember doing that. So I've known about that tournament for a while. And you're right. That's back when Sandersons were wrestling there. So yeah, it's got a good history.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and to see it climbing back towards that, yeah, it's awesome. Steven Adams says, hats off to all those ninth graders who made some waves this weekend. Now you were talking about that, and then Steven also said it was really cool watching the 106 and 113 boys from Mountain Home, the Rosales twins, twins that are so fun to watch and cheer each other on. Gabe is at 106. Daniel is at 113. Brian, as we talk about 4A, obviously Minico, gets the headlines, and Jerome, of course, also is a strong program the last couple of years. But Mountain Home is also in that same district. All three of those teams are all right there. Where does Mountain Home fit in the grand scheme of things?
Mountain Home could do well in a tournament because you got the Rosales brothers that are going to score high. You've got Grizzle at 195 that's going to be in the placing. Grizzle's over at Mountain View, not Mountain Home. They're 220. They've got Smith there at 220. Hanson is ranked right now at 160, and their 225 Hodges, I believe, is also ranked. I'd have to look at that. But so, I mean, what they've got, they don't have as much depth as some of those other teams, but they've got the hammers there with the Rosales brothers, Hanson, Hodges, and Smith. And there's others there that are going to score some points.
Yeah, and I watched the Rosales brothers at state last year, and one of them won the state tournament. I remember he was just so happy. But I had the opportunity to talk to them at the national camp for Fargo. Great kids, great personality, good heads. These kids are going to go far in life. Very respectful. I mean, it was great to meet them. Just good kids, good attitude in life.
Yeah, I think Gabe was one of the last ones to leave the gym. He was there helping people clean up. I mean,
just a first-class citizen, I'll tell you that. Solid kids.
Yep.
Yes, for sure. Some more comments about Tiger-Grizz. Lisa Wood says, it was my son's first time competing. It did not disappoint. Some great matches. And hey, you get to look forward to it at least for a couple more years then if it was your son's first time. So that's going to be something positive to look at. Blake says, I think Chris Owens won the Tiger-Grizz 4 times. So.
Yeah, that's probably true. There's no doubt about it, actually. and Ridge Levitt probably would have had he wrestled at the Tiger-Grizz too. But yeah, there's your 4-timer right there.
there's some guys who just automatically, wherever they went, they probably won 4 times, right?
Yeah,
Chris Owens definitely one of those.
Chris had 2 state titles at Skyline and 2 at Idaho Falls, so that was even more unique because he went to both high schools. He was a Tiger and a Grizz.
So, Brian, if you had to rank the 2 tournaments, Raleigh and Tiger-Grizz, you would have Raleigh here, then Tiger-Grizz just right below it.
Yeah,
I think Raleigh had a little more depth.
I think so. That's probably right. Yeah,
but they're both great measuring sticks for the state tournament. I think some of the weights are tougher than what they're going to meet at state.
It depends on the bracket for sure.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. David and Michaela talking about Gabe Rosales from Mountain Home. Great kid. Our son wrestled him a couple times last year. And David and Michaela, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're Minico, right? I can't remember where you guys are from. So let me know in the chat because it'll be interesting to know, where Mountain Home is traveling and what circles they're hitting. Billy and Chelsea, they're Thunder Ridge parents. Taylor was really looking forward to competing. Super bummed she wasn't able to. Tayson had tough matches. Yeah, everybody had tough matches. It was you coming out of there with a championship, you earned it. So no doubt.
That's one of the great freshmen we have, Taylor Brown. That was just heartbreaking to see that she's done for the season. And speedy recover to her. I know she's going to bounce back better than ever, but as a freshman, that's just heartbreaking. She 1 loss on the season just to the Lewiston. I can't think of the 98-pound Lewiston girl's name. I should think of it, but that was her only loss on the season. So to see Taylor that walking around the tournament in a sling was heartbreaking. So speedy recovery to Taylor.
Yeah, that's tough. I think you're thinking of Jolie Slider.
Yeah.
Jolie Slider. Yep.
Lewiston.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, speaking of Jolie, she won a title at the Clearwater Classic up in Lewiston this weekend. Hoyt Havas and Robert Storm also picked up wins for Lewiston. Those were the individuals who won at the Clearwater Classic. I think I saw there was 18 teams maybe from kind of North Idaho and Washington and Oregon over there competing. Weezer went up there and actually won the team title. So we talk about South Fremont a lot, obviously, Al, in 3A wrestling, but here's Weezer going up to a pretty big competition and coming away with a team title as well and turning some heads.
No, it's great to see. A lot of these teams are putting it on the line against the best competition and prepping their kids. It's always good to see some of the smaller schools do well.
Yeah. The other 3A school, Fruitland, won the Gooding Duels tournament. And American Falls is up there. So you have, two of the ranked 3A teams went, head to head in duels, and to see Fruitland, beat American Falls, that was pretty impressive. And Fruitland's number 2 team won some duels at the tournament. They had 2 full squads. And, if your 2 teams winning some duels, they're going to have the depth at state. So they could cause a stir in 3A.
Yeah, and of course,
we wrestled Fruitland earlier in the year, Rocky, and they're competitive. They're a pretty solid team. They were really competitive. Some good wrestlers.
Yeah, and of course, any 3A conversation, we got to talk about Buell, right? The Buell Indians. Troy is, of course, South Fremont fan. He says, Gooding Duels, watch out for Ruiz at 126 for Buell. This kid is electric. And yeah, the Gooding Duels also had some very good 3A competition going on. Jacob is with us in the chat tonight as he's doing dad duty. Ruiz from Buell, he's echoing what Troy said. And Clemens from Fruitland, Havas, Fulmer from Teton, you talked about a little bit, guys. Tiger-Grizz, all real big weekends. That's what I love about wrestling is one good weekend and all of a sudden somebody's stock can really take off, and what you thought coming in can change just like that, Al, right?
Yeah, and because you look at Tiger-Grizz, trying to think what weight it was, 45s, you had DJ Nider from Idaho Falls, 10th grader, ranked 5th in the state. He beat he won that weight group against kid that took 4th in the state year before from Snake River. And in fact, I think there was 3 kids in his weight that were state placers. So he's on the radar now. So he did really well for being a sophomore, not placing that state the year before. So I'm sure he's going to be a kid that's going to possibly get a medal this season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. His dad usually tunes into our podcast here, and so it'll be interesting to see where DJ goes. Does he stay 45 because he's wrestled a lot of the season at 38 and goes up for this tournament and wins it? So, those choices you got to make.
Yeah, and consider once again, it's going to be 3 weigh-ins. Some kids may say, "Hey, I got the confidence, I could place."
Yeah.
So they may, we'll see. We'll see how that works.
And another kid whose stock is really rising, I feel like the last couple of weeks, we talked about this kind of before we hopped on the air tonight, Brian, is Balmforth. Shelley.
Yeah.
He's really wrestled well the last couple of weeks.
He has. I mean, he's wrestled some great matches. He finals of Madison Invitational, he beat Packer, caught him in a chin whip in the 3rd period, but it was a competitive match up until that point. And Tiger-Grizz, again, I think he was 4th. I think he wrestled Packer twice. His only losses in the tournament, I believe, were to Packer both times. He beat Eck from Thunder Ridge, if I'm not mistaken, in that weight class. And so, yeah, I mean, Balmforth from Shelley, he's definitely on the rise.
And I would say, tell me your thoughts, Brian. It looked like 20s was one of the tougher weights. I mean, with Mauger being a 2-time champion, the kid from Corner was a 2-time finalist champion, Packer, then Balmforth 4th, and he's a 2-time placer. Then then Eck, who's a 2-time state champion, took 5th at that same weight. So, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and then you include Nampa, you got Navarro. I mean, absolutely, 120 in Idaho is, I mean, it's a great national weight class. I mean, you've got 3 or 4 kids there that are in the top 20 in the country between Mauger, Navarro, Eck's been an All-American, Packer's been an All-American. Balmforth now is beating some of these kids, and state placer. And in fact, was he a state champion or 2nd as a freshman?
He took 2nd and 6th at state.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's a stacked weight class statewide. Yeah.
Definitely for the 4A, he's going to be. Well, he's got Mauger, so I wouldn't doubt he makes the finals.
Yep.
Yep. Stephen kind of asked the question. We were all talking about seeding, state rankings, and we'll have those for you at some point tomorrow on IdahoSports.com, the new rankings for the week. Seeding versus placing at Tiger-Grizz. Anyone making jumps this week, Brian? But besides the guys we've already talked about, you think anybody else whose stock rose from this?
Besides the guys we talked about, at 170, Britton Sorensen from Bonneville. I think he ended up 5th, but there were a couple people, Claiborne from Canyon Ridge and Anderson, who he placed ahead of, that are ranked ahead of him statewide. That could be a jump. It's going to be fun. DJ Nider, I mean, I think we had him 5th or 6th at 138. If they bump him to 45 after this, he beat several of the kids. The Domenico kid was there. Blackfoot was there. Obviously, Beidelman wasn't there, and Valdez, but he could pop on the radar and jump on 45 if we move him to 45 there. So there's a handful that could change for sure. I'm trying to think who else from Tiger-Grizz, but definitely could be some movement.
Yeah, Troy's got one. Frothinger wrestled really tough, especially coming off an injury from Eagle. Frothinger.
Yep.
Yeah. Tanner is tough. I think he had a tighter semi or quarterfinal match. I remember. I'd have to go back and look, but after that, he seemed to be really in sync.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great to see him, back on the mat for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jacob says Sawyer Anderson over Frothinger was big for seeding when we get to the 98 pound at 5A. And that's always something to think about too, right? Is the seeding process, and they look at all this stuff that happened in the regular season. And I know that's always a topic that everybody wants to talk about is, who gets seeded where. But that's all part of the deal for sure.
It's not as easy as it looks, because if you look at all the placers, you got a majority of the placers were 4A, because I think most of the schools were 4A. There, but there's a mixture of 3A, 4A, 5A. I don't think there was any 2A placers there, but yeah, it's there was some number ones in the 5A losing to a number 2 in the 3A. So I mean, it's they're all about the same level, but it's a little tricky for the rankings.
Yeah, for sure. A couple more comments rolling in here, just kind of catching up on what we were talking about. H.A. Havas, love hearing from Havas. Weezer wrestled tough at the big weights. Again, talking about the Clearwater Classic up in Lewiston this past week. Steven says DJ won't be going anywhere. What a stud. We were talking about that a couple minutes ago. Matthew Hamilton was asking about, was it 145? I can't remember.
145.
Yeah, he said I was sure Cody Rich was going to get it. We also have in here Lisa Wood talking about 170 at 5A is stacked. I'm inclined to agree right now with last week's rankings. The top 6: Laguna, accordingly, Rogers, Benjamin Miller from Boise, Hockland from Middleton, Wyatt Romero from Timberline. That's pretty good.
And then don't we have Foret from Columbia? I know he was looked like he medical defaulted to 6, but he's another one who's a state champion, 2-time placer.
Yeah, and he's
Columbia's. But they're 4A. Columbia's 4A. I stand corrected. So yeah.
Okay. Also, let's see here in the chat. Jacob says Farrow from Fruitland over Orr from Buell makes Orr a 4 seed at state as of right now. He could be wrong. That's interesting. That's lower than I would have thought, but
that's crazy.
Yeah. Oh man. Troy Hobbs says congrats to Belknap at 152. Look good. Beat the Middleton kid. Great match. Good showing there. Matthew Hamilton, another shout out for Jose Laguna. Lisa Wood says Hockland mom here. Steven says Blackfoot has some underdogs that came up big this weekend. Cole Inskeep, Kylan Guerra, Ty Adams hustling every day. Blackfoot is, to me, I kind of compare Blackfoot to Highland, right? It's a team that's coming from the East, coming with decent numbers, but kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit at state. What do you think about Blackfoot's chances this year, Brian?
Yeah, Blackfoot could be, one of those teams that, don't count them out. I mean, I think we've got them, third or fourth in the rankings right now, fifth. So we've got them fifth, but again, it's a deep team, and Adams made the finals at 113 as a freshman. And then Henderson, he's number one in the rankings. We know Mager's going to be there. The 106-pounder Abercrombie is going to score some points. The two Inskeep brothers, I think at 45 and 52, scored points at Tiger-Grizz, medaled. Kylan Guerrera at 160 should be in the state medals. That's another person that's, moving up our rankings quick. He came from not ranked, and, he should be, 3 or 4 in that weight because he's beat just about everybody there. He beat the Siemens kid from Nampa, who came down up at the duels last week. So Blackfoot is you cannot count them out, and they've got a lot of kids, good depth. So absolutely.
Yeah. Keep an eye on Blackfoot. Okay, Al, this next question I'm going to direct to you because we were talking a little bit about this before the show tonight while we were waiting for Brian to hop on the chat. This is from Wade Waldron. He says, what do you guys know about the session schedule for state this year? Nothing posted yet on the IHSAA website. Can they run all classifications plus girls at the same time at the Idaho Center? Have they considered just keeping state at Holt? We talked about this a little bit last week in terms of facilities. And according to Wade, not enough space at the Idaho Center. We talked about this, Al. It's a tightrope to do.
I think it's possible, but so say you had it at the Idaho Center, say there's 12, maybe, I don't know, maybe you can squeeze another mat or two in there. The way it's ran now is you have 4 mats for each division. So you sort of do it in that quadrant. If we were to do it at Idaho Center, they would have to be able to run everything simultaneously where you randomly go to whatever mat because you'd have to keep this thing flowing. So I think it's possible, but you'd have to set up the system where it's, you're not in one section. You can go anywhere, sort of like how they run the Raleigh Lane. Your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's, it's a logistical, I have not seen the schedule. I was looking for the schedule as well. I was going to ask the coaches if they'd seen an email with the session breakdown. So I have not seen that either. Hopefully we can get a hold of that this week because that'd be a fun discussion as to how they're going to do it. Are they going to try to do it's usually broken up by division. So I have to assume they're going to keep it the same way and just mix the girls in or hold a separate session. No idea, but it's going to be interesting to see how they work it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talked about this last week or maybe the week before, and we determined that Raleigh Lane had more wrestlers, right, mm-hmm. than what state will have. So I guess to me that means that they can pull it off somehow, right? I mean,
so I just remembered I got something sent to me, and it's tentative. It can change, but apparently it looks like on Thursday they have the 3A, 2A on 6 mats, session 1. Girls will be on 8 mats, session 1s. And then this is started at 9 a.m. on Thursday. Then 1 o'clock the girls will go on 8 mats. Then at 3 o'clock to 6:30, 5A and 4A will go on 6 mats. That's how Thursday will run. And then on Friday, session 2 would start at 9 o'clock, session 3, and so forth. But and then on Saturday they do the console round, then medal matches, then the parade of champs. But I'm sure that's subject to change.
That's always the big disclaimer, right? Subject to change. That's a very tentative plan. Bo Ward brings up a good point. Pretty sure Holt Arena is under renovation right now. You are correct, Bo. They got half of it done. Then they kind of stopped for football season at Idaho State. And now they're doing the other half. I'm sure it's just a concrete floor in there right now. So, I mean, you could throw mats down, but there's a lot of dust and heavy machinery and whatnot. Okay, Troy says right now, Aiden Atau, MVP from Bora. This kid is one of my favorites. Good job, buddy. And yeah, I mean, we talk about Aiden every week. I feel like he is He is one of Idaho's best and brightest wrestlers, and the saying is the rising tide lifts all boats. And he is lifting everybody else up in Idaho with him because more eyeballs are being diverted to our state. Now, we've talked about this a lot with the exposure that Idaho is getting because of all of these great wrestlers at the top. Alfonso wants to know, and NHA agrees, for sure, legendary status. Natasha Storm giving a shout out to Big Rob Storm at 285. I'm assuming they're related, from Lewiston, representing the Bengals. Okay, Alfonso says, who's the most dominant wrestler in their class? Al, Brian, do you guys have a good answer for this? Doesn't have to be a Tao. It can be who's just the most dominant. Like, let's chalk it up and call it a day.
I would have to go with a Tao. I mean, I think it's – but when you're talking dominance, the kid is dominant. I mean, Skellinger's also great. Mauger, he's definitely dominant, but his weight class is so tough you just don't see it. He's got the competition, but a Tao with the Mountain View kid, the heavyweight there that he had.
Shiloh Jones.
Shiloh Jones. I mean, that's his closest, and Tao's beat him pretty good. So I would have to go with the Tao there. I can't think of anybody.
Yeah, I agree. It's Tao. Then you got Skellinger. They're both world level wrestlers. And the thing about a Tao and then Jones is getting better because of a Tao. Yeah. He's going after him. He's not just saying, okay, you're going to beat me. He wants to win. So that's elevating him. And he's a Fargo All-American too. And that's what happens is kids aspire to be like the Maugers, like the Taos. And it just makes the competition better and deeper and stronger, which is great to see.
Yeah, and then Mara also from Meridian is definitely dominant.
Great technician.
Yep, exactly.
Yep, I was going to say we're getting a lot of votes here in the chat. HA says first he said attaining. I think that was autocorrect, and then it was a Tao. Alfonso says a Tao. Jacob said at 5A Mara that we were talking about. Matthew says that as well. Jacob also says Mac Mauger, of course, at 4A from Blackfoot. 3A Hobbs from South Fremont. Maddox echoes that. Hunter Hobbs, 182, 3A. The guy I was going to go with was I was going to say Matt Martino, Bishop Kelly, 126. I don't know.
Solid kid's got a great resume, right? He's placed at Fargo. He's went to the World Trials. He's up and coming. He won the Cadet Pan American Games, so he knows how to compete. He's still adjusting in weights. He's grown a little bit, but he's definitely a great one.
Yeah, I mean, state of lane for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Also, H.A. Halas says Ryder and Jaden are right there too. Skellinger and Ryder's Seguin. Hobbs and Mauger. 3A Cade Craig, slightly under Hobbs, barely, Jacob says. Billy and Chelsea say besides their own kiddos, they really enjoy watching Courtney Hunt from American Falls. A lot of Hunts doing all sorts of great athletic things in American Falls. Great soccer and basketball players as well. Ryder Seguin at 98. Ryder from Post Falls, definitely. Coulter Burton from American Falls, 3A State 20 dominance, 8 matches, 7 pins, 1 tech. Yeah, the numbers don't lie there, that's for sure. That's pretty.
So I want to throw in Frothinger too from Eagle. Tanner, I mean, he's going for his 4th state title, multiple All-American. And in the girls, we have to look at Alyssa Randall. She's going for number 4 too, 4-time Raleigh champ. Very solid wrestler in the girls division.
Yep, and I think Cadence Beck is still undefeated up there, and Jolie Slider, Taylor Brown was undefeated, and I believe Jolie Slider teched her up there. That's pretty dominant at 98 pounds for girls as well. So it's a couple other girls that need mentioned.
And when I've seen Russell a few times, it's impressed me is Haley Campbell from state champion from Columbia at 152s. She's I'm surprised she's not ranked nationally. She's starting to beat some good girls out there. So solid wrestler.
Yeah, and when you talk girls, I mean, Skyla Zimmerman from Moscow is always a great one to watch. Steven says for the girls, Vale and LeBeau. Those are great ones also. Little self-promotion here. I enjoy watching. Hey, I got no problem with it. At least
another great freshman.
Yes. Jacob says Zimmerman gave Beck a loss early, but it was a close match. Talking about Skyla and Cadence there. Skellinger, Jolie Slider is a beast. AJ Habas says, yeah, I got to put Tanner Frothinger there as well. So many talented kids in Idaho. Good topic. Yes. And that's why we love doing this, because there's so many. We could talk about 40 different kids on any given night. And so it's just so much fun to watch the talent.
Well, one more in the girls division too. She's only a sophomore from Mountain Home, Amy Hartman. I think she took runner-up last year. She's beaten a lot of people this year. So I can see her starting to elevate in the national rankings very soon, if not, at the end of this year. She's really making big strides in just 1 year.
Yep, for sure. Okay, Matthew Hamilton from Post Falls has a question. Next big tournaments, and will districts affect the state seedings? And also, do seedings at state matter if they're on the same team? So let's talk about the seeding part first, and then we'll go into what's coming up this weekend, because there's, of course, Red Halverson that we'll talk about. But okay, so, and I don't know the answer to this, Brian. Does what happened at districts affect state seeding? It must, right?
Absolutely, yeah. District placement, so district champion and placement at district are some of the top criteria. I don't have in front of me exactly what they are, but I believe district champion is the second or third criteria for state. Well, probably third or fourth, because you got returning state champions, returning state placer. And then I think district champion is either the third or the fourth seeding criteria. So that absolutely will matter. Plus, it usually goes to head. So, if the one guy beats the two and that's the only time they've wrestled, or it's the second or the third time, it's a rubber match. It definitely matter. And if they're on the same team, yeah, because that JV guy is not going to, most likely, unless they've been able to wrestle these varsity tournaments, is not going to have the seeding criteria. So, the one guy could be a 1 or 2 seed, and your JV's guy is drawing in. They try to separate those if possible, but sometimes it's not possible, and 2 guys on the same team will end up on the same side.
Yeah. And people got to realize too, sometimes being 6th seed is better than being 4th seed, because you're on the bottom half and you may have a better shot at beating some of those kids than going up against the number 1 seed. It's strategic, very strategic.
Yes. Some coaches are okay with where their guys ended up seated at, even though they think, quote unquote, they should be higher for sure. Okay. Red Halverson coming up this weekend. There's been a ton of questions and comments about Red Halverson. I can't find all of them right now, so I'm just going to go with Jacob because he had the most recent. Who wins Red Halverson? And he also wants to know who wins the North Idaho Rumble. So let's start with Red Halverson. This is the big one that is hosted by Minico. Troy Hobbs says it's Minico, coming off that Tiger-Grizz win. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, my money's on Minico as well. Just seeing them at Tiger-Grizz, the depth they have, it's their home tournament. Other teams that are in the mix, obviously Nampa's going to be in the mix. Snake River had a good showing at Tiger-Grizz. So I would say it's Nampa or Minico. It's probably Minico, but I would say Nampa's probably in the top 2 or 3 there. Blackfoot could make some noise. We've already talked about Blackfoot.
Bishop Kelly's going to be there, right? So they have 5 or 6 kids. If they're all healthy, could possibly score a lot lot of if they get kids in the finals.
Yeah, BK is still the big wild card to me, because they've been competing at some stuff in Idaho, but they've also been kind of off doing their own thing a little bit. And I don't know. I really do think they're going to be a big player at state, but in terms of them versus Idaho competition, we haven't seen as much of that this year, right?
Yeah.
So they're the big wild card for sure. Okay, other good competitions here. Steven says Blackfoot isn't going to Red. Where, if you know where Blackfoot's headed, Steven, let us know in the chat for sure. Troy also says, Minico, Nampa, BK, kind of what we echoed there. Alfonso wanted to give a shout out to the North Fremont wrestlers. He said, I had the privilege of spending the weekend with North Fremont. No seniors on the team, so they're young, but a good group of young men. Shout out to them and their coaches. Yeah, that's great. And then kind of piggybacking on the 2A conversation, Michelle and Dan Fabi, these must be Louie's parents up in Clearwater Valley. The North-South duels this weekend, huge for 2A up there in Kuski. That's going to be a big weekend as well up in North Idaho.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Up at Clearwater, huh?
Yep. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then continuing the 2A conversation, the Willoughbys. Shout out to the New Plymouth Wrestlers and their R.D. Brown tourney this weekend. Where's that one at? I'm still a newbie. I'm still learning where all these are at.
I'm not sure where that one is either. I haven't.
Mm-mm.
Maybe in Oregon. I mean, New Plymouth is right there on that Oregon border, but maybe Julie and Eric can tell us in the chat. Okay, it's in New Plymouth. Okay, they're hosting.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry, I'm still learning.
That's one I've never been to. I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah. Jacob says, it's in New Plymouth. Okay. H.A. Hibas says the North Idaho Rumble is going to be a good one this year. What do you think of this field up north, Brian?
I don't know the Washington schools that are going to be there. Hartford, couple West Valley. I don't know the Washington Wrestlers, but American Falls is going up. It looks like on the site. Canyon Ridge. So you got a little mix of American Falls. I don't know if American Falls and Canyon Ridge have been together. Buell's up there, it looks like. So it's going to be a great turn. Lewiston obviously is up there. I think Pocatello, I talked to their coach. I believe they're headed up there this week. So it's going to be an interesting mix of schools, some of them that we haven't seen together before. So it's going to be a great tournament. And I don't know who the favorite is. And I'd have to say American Falls. Lewiston's going to have it. Well, Post Falls, I believe, is there. So Post Falls has got to be the favorite if Post Falls is up there. But interesting mix.
Yeah, Matthew Hamilton says, y'all know who wins the Rumble. That's
there you go.
I will say, though, Al, we've got some dissenting opinions in the chat here. Sam Seguin says Post Falls. Troy Hobbs says, I think Buell could win the Rumble if they are all healthy and fully staffed. And Jacob Beck also wants to know, Fred Bartlett, is it going to be a full lineup up north? No answer yet, but.
Yeah, they didn't wrestle their full lineup this week, so that might have given Fruitland the advantage. I think they were missing some kids there. So,
yeah.
That's why it's fun. I mean, you got Buell and Post Falls, so here we got the Powers in 5A and 3A going head to head, and be fun to see how it turns out.
Yeah, well, now Troy's walking it back a little bit. He says, I didn't know Post was going. So he's Al, this is what makes wrestling fun, though, Al, right? Because you can talk about Buell and Post Falls going head-to-head, South Fremont and Meridian going head-to-head. And we just, in other sports, we don't get that as much. Whereas in wrestling, you really can go, mano a mano. And it doesn't really matter what classification says. If you've got the guys, you can compete.
Now, this is what I'm talking about. All these kids are putting in the time. A lot of them, small schools, are going to Fargo. There's some great wrestling across the board. And that's what I was talking about when I first moved here. I observed that, and I'm like, wow, there's something special happening here. And that as a writer and promoter, my goal is to bring the conversation into Idaho from the national scale. So we're part of it because there's a lot to talk about, and it's great. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we're happy to bring you the podcast every single week. We're going to wrap it up here. Thanks to everybody that was in the chat tonight. Stimulating conversation, as always. One last request before we duck out of here. You're hanging out. Hit that like button, whether you're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and then share this as well. Retweet it. Share the post. That'll help everybody else that isn't able to be here live come back tomorrow, because we get tons of people that come back and watch it later. So it's easier for them to find the more people like it and share it. So, okay, a couple quick questions. Julie and Eric want to know, is there rankings this week? Yes, we are working on them. They will be up sometime tomorrow, probably, is what I will tell you there. And Steven, hashtag Grow Women's Wrestling. Couldn't agree more. We're off to a great start with that, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger in the state of Idaho for sure. So, all right, Brian, Al, thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate the insights, guys.
Thanks,
okay,
man.
Pleasure. I'm going to Red Halverson with our team, so I'll be able to have a little, mat side insight. So I look forward to it.
I'll be there too. We'll see you there, Al.
All right, cool. Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast. We'll see you next week for another live show here on Idaho Sports.